How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at The Outer Limits. This is Season 1, Episode 6, and this one's entitled The Man Who Was Never Born. The episode was directed by Leonard Horn and stars Martin Landau and Shirley Knight, and aired all the way back in October 28th of 1963. And overall, this is a pretty solid episode. The idea that there's one guy who wrecked the future, and now a mutant from the future is traveling back in time to try to stop him from ever being born. Really classic sci-fi time travel stuff. The mutant's makeup is pretty cool, there's some fun special effects, a whole dystopian future world, and a little spaceship they can ride around in. Again, it's a really solid episode. Now, there are a few problems. There are some plot conveniences, and then towards the end of the episode we get major themes like love and the possibility of predestination all being just kind of thrown out there, and I'm like, I kind of wish this was woven in a little bit better. But overall, again, it's still a pretty solid episode. There is one thing standing in its way, and it's no fault of the episode itself, and that's just that we've gotten so many things like this that happened afterwards. The plot of going back in time to stop someone who'd be a big problem later, that's like what the Terminators were doing in the Terminator franchise. There's also elements in here that reminded me of the Planet of the Apes series as well. And in turn, I think the novelty and the newness of this episode just doesn't really come across to a modern audience. That being said, that's absolutely no fault of this episode, and this would probably go on to inspire a lot of the things we love. So yeah, a fun little time travel romp, and just kind of bear in mind that it was much more original back in the day. Not perfect, but still really solid. But all that being said, in order to talk about it a little further, let's take a bit of a deeper dive into the plot. Now, I'm not going to do any major spoilers, I'll try not to ruin any of the end bits, but I do want to talk, and again, primarily on setup. So that being said, what's this episode about? We open up with an astronaut, and the control voice tells us he's doing his first ever solo flight, and that space is kind of empty and lonely. However, he goes through some sort of weird rift, and when he lands on Earth, he finds that civilization is mostly gone. He meets a mutant, and the mutant says, "Hey, don't be afraid of me, I may look scary, but I'm just a regular guy now." And then we get him talking about the backstory. Most people are dead, he has this sort of like cool underground library, and I think that's an actual painting of the library going back farther than the set they actually built. But he says that at one point in time, shortly after the astronaut left his original timeline, there was a guy, Bertram Cabot Jr., who found an alien microbe and began to study it, and this would lead to a disease breaking out, mutating a bunch of humans. They're disfigured, life is harder for them, they don't reproduce as successfully, and now we have the Earth being mostly abandoned, and it's this horrible wasteland. And he said that one man, Bertram Cabot Jr., is responsible for the desecration of the entire Earth. Which, yeah, that's a really interesting idea to think about. Now, the astronaut says, "Hey, I'm gonna go back in my ship, take you to the past, and when people in the past see you and I vouch for you, they're gonna say, okay, let's avoid this timeline, we're not going to do that." And they get back in the ship and head toward the rift. Now, I do want to say I really do love the ship. When it lands, it opens up and a little thing opens to reveal the ladder. So there's a cool exterior. The inside, you got these two chairs and a bunch of dials. Classic sci-fi interior. And I love the little cutout of the ship flying through space. I don't know how they did it back in the day, but boy, nowadays it'd be so easy to draw a little line around it, turn it into a PNG, and then animate it moving across space. I'm sure it was much harder back in the day, but whatever. They get in their retro sci-fi ship and they head back to Earth. Now, I'm not 100% sure why, but the original astronaut doesn't survive the trip back and he fades away. I do wish this was explained a little bit more. I don't know, maybe something radiation? Whatever. Now when he lands on Earth, the mutant has the problem of no one's necessarily going to believe him without the famous astronaut there to vouch for him. And then we do get into some of the episode's kind of conveniences. You see, it turns out this mutant does have a special superpower, the ability to kind of cause illusions. If he sees someone coming, he can manipulate them into seeing him as just a regular normal person. This will let him go and live in town inconspicuously, and then like if he needs money, oh, I'll just project the image of money and you'll think I paid you. Again, a bit of a convenience so the episode can actually happen, but whatever, it still is a pretty fun idea, especially because he has to be careful with it. He has to see someone in order to put them under his illusion, because if he doesn't, like if they sneak up on him without him knowing, they might see his true form. So he has to like be really active in his doing this, and it's not a super easy cheat for him. He goes down to a local boarding house to stay, and that's where he meets Noelle. Noelle, the mother of Bertram Cabot Jr., and they find out that Bertram Cabot is currently in the army. He's going to come back to marry Noelle. So the mutant does have to stick around a few days in order to catch up with him and stop Bertram Cabot Jr. from ever being born. Now there is something a bit weird with this episode, where it takes the mutant a while to realize that it's Bertram Cabot Sr. that's going to be coming back. I mean, the mother is clearly way too young, and when they talk about her getting married, that should have made sense. They say, oh, we know so much about this guy's history, yet you can't really put together that you're a generation earlier than you thought for quite some time, and I don't get, you know, like, that's clearly his mother. You said his mother's name earlier, you said you know so much about him. Yeah, I don't know why it takes him so long to figure this out. And also, like, Noelle's right there when he first lands. I'm guessing he piloted that ship to the exact spot because of his historical knowledge. But again, super weird about the whole not figuring out the generation thing right off the bat. But again, whatever. He sticks around with her for a while and begins to develop a bit of a fixation on her. Again, though, the romance isn't super developed, but it is kind of interesting for this, like, time travel story. And of course, he talks with the guy's father and says, don't marry her, the fate of the world depends on it, but why on earth would you ever believe this guy? The plot itself isn't super twisty, and I wish he had a better idea other than just trying to convince this guy not to get married without any proof. And again, they don't wonder if they can change time until the very end. So yeah, it did get a little clunky in regards to predestination and love. And yeah, maybe we could have ironed it out a little better. Still though, a really early example of this storytelling trope. There's a scene earlier on where the astronaut's in the spaceship going back in time and saying, that is a weird thought, what if some of history's greatest villains were never born? And you can tell the way they introduce that thought, they bring it to light to the audience, that this was like way more revolutionary back in the day. The episode does play out to a pretty fun climax, and it does end on a really killer visual. Like, it didn't end the way I thought it would, and the final shot here is pretty cool. They also have some cool comping, like there's a scene where the mutant's talking about his horrible world and they have his eyes and they kind of fade out, and you get the future world comped below his face. There's some cool visuals in this as well. And yeah, I did ultimately like where this ended up. So overall, not the biggest, not my favorite episode, but a really cool idea, and I really like what it was doing. So yeah, I can recommend this one. Especially if you like what it went on to inspire, like say The Terminator. All that being said though, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you, really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Outer Limits playlist. If you want to see me review the past episodes, feel free to click right here and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Playlist here. Have a good day now.